Let's get into audience questions. First question, David, we've got the World Cup going on. Do you think the World Cup is an acceptable form of nationalism? In short, yes. In short, yes. And there's an interesting study which questions whether qualifying for the World Cup makes countries more nationalistic and even potentially aggressive towards other countries in their geopolitics. I am not a nationalistic guy, right? I don't think that it's anything more than odds, whether you're born in one country or another. I talk so often about how equality of opportunity varies drastically based merely on who you happen to be born to and where you happen to be born. I happen to be born in Argentina. So I'm a fan of the Argentinian men's national team, which was very prematurely eliminated from this year's World Cup. And actually now really none of the teams I like are left. But putting that aside, I recognize that although my potential was arguably the same, whether my family had stayed in Argentina or come to the United States, that my opportunity to exercise that potential went up drastically because I ended up in the United States. There's no doubt of that. And there's sort of this sliding scale of nationalism, and we tend to see the right much more favorably seeing the more aggressive and jingoistic forms of nationalism. I get into the World Cup stuff, and in a sense, whether it's an acceptable form of nationalism kind of depends on your personal politics. For me, it's more fun, and the idea of an allegiance that is not implicative of going to war or whatever else. But the truth is that there actually are a lot of politics wrapped up in the World Cup.
I think it's acceptable, though. I mean, we're not talking about racial superiority. We're not talking about who has the better military. We're just kicking a ball around after all. And I think if you say that it's not acceptable, then our, state championships, competitions where one state goes against another within the U.S., is that going to be acceptable too?
No, that's
I think
completely
that opens up a whole door.
That's completely politically incorrect, and there should be no pride whatsoever in your state. No, listen, I am not. I think that the left is often unfairly characterized as lacking all pride, and I hate to even use the term patriotism, but in a way, sort of accused of lacking patriotism. And I completely reject that. We talk about how when we criticize our healthcare system, it's not because we are unpatriotic. It's because we are trying to raise the country up to a higher standard. It's a different form of patriotism. And then when it comes to soccer, you can make the case that in a sense everything is political, that qualifying for the World Cup does create a sort of more aggressive geopolitical outlook. But I think that this is not a high priority, and there are much more concerning types of nationalism than merely saying, hey, my family's from Argentina. By the way, the U.S. didn't even make it, so I didn't even have a choice to make between the U.S. and Argentina. I'm going to root for Argentina. I think it's effectively harmless. And if somebody disagrees, I want to hear from you.